So that's kind of like when you have a disconnect between the design team and the build team. Those kind of things can happen. And who's left in the middle? It's the client.
Welcome to The Deck Rebel, a limited series that dives deep into the journey of Sean McAleer. Over the past several decades, Sean has reshaped outdoor living, transforming the humble backyard deck into a luxurious year-round extension of the home. Last time, we took a deep dive into the groundbreaking design elements and innovations that have quickly become must-haves. Today, we're going to learn all about this process and get an exclusive look into the master plan. Can you tell us more about that? What the master plan is?
Yeah, the master plan is really important. I see a lot of people that kind of piecemeal the backyard together. So what we do is, whether or not we're designing or building today, building a pool, say, and in addition to the deck or patios, louvered roof, we want to know all that from the client, right? We want to know if they're going to have, if they want a pool. If a pool's a 3-year plan, I want to know that, because I want to design the whole thing together. I'm going to put the pool in the plan, and I'm going to lay out the deck so the views are in the right direction, line of sight for the pool, how that's all going to line up. And then we do phase 1, and phase 1 stands on itself. If they never do the pool, it doesn't matter. But knowing that where everything goes, so that when you go later, like I've had clients come to me after they put the pool in and go, oh, now we need to replace our deck because we have such a beautiful pool and everything else, and we want to do all this stuff. And I go, we can't do that. You're 5 feet too close to the pool. They're like, oh, the pool guy just said to put it there, and seemed like a good idea. That no master plan, piecemealing, right? So we want to avoid situations like that. And that's the macro. The micro is, if you're going to do, a lot of people do projects in phases, right? So I want to do a kitchen, I want to do a fireplace, I want to do a louvered roof, but maybe I can't fit that in the budget today, right? What we do is we plan out the whole thing, and then we deconstruct it, and we put in the infrastructure for those elements later. So if a client calls me, which this has happened, client called me after we built the deck, they didn't want a louvered roof. Nope, don't need a louvered roof, absolutely not. We built the deck, they call me back, they go, hey, what about that louvered roof? And I'm like, okay, so we gotta rip up the deck now to put the footings in for the louvered roof. So it cost them, a chunk of money, right? And it's not really best practice. So now we have those conversations, and if they're on the fence, yeah, maybe, okay, so let's spend whatever marginal amount of money as an insurance policy. If you never do that next phase, add in the kitchen, add in this fire or louvered roof or regular roof or whatever, nobody will ever know. But if you do, you just saved yourself a ton of money, and everything is designed the right way.
Yeah. So you're kind of designing with the end in mind, the dream in mind, but you don't have to achieve the dream for it to be a beautiful, beautiful, usable space.
One of the things I learned early on with people was they would try, so they wanted everything. Guy wanted to shrink down the project, get the budget down, kept shrinking everything, like the levels and different things, and settled on what he wanted. He said, yep, definitely want it. And I didn't have the credentials I have now where I could say to you, this is crazy, just don't do this. So I built it for him, and we got it up, we got it framed. Calls me up as soon as I get home, we got to make it bigger. You're better off putting in the nice deck now and then going back next year and putting in the nice size louvered roof. So when you're all done, it's a space that you can use.
Within the master plan, how do you factor in realistic expectations?
You want to plan for what's reasonable. If they're never doing a 30 by 60 pool, there's no point in putting that in there. You got to be a little bit realistic to where, to make the master plan, because it's not a game, it's not a fantasy, right? It's not just fun time. Hey, let's just put all the stuff in there that we can never afford to build, or maybe not even allowed to build on the property, right? So we want to kind of dial it back and go, okay, what's reasonable? What are we going to do? I want to know, is there kids in the family? How old are the kids? Are they smaller? We got to think about stairs. Do we got to think about that kind of stuff? And then we also got to think about, they're not going to be that small forever. Right? So finishing the space underneath the deck, because the kids are going to be down there watching TV, playing games, doing whatever, while the adults are upstairs, that's going to happen. it's life happens, right? So do we want to put in a hot tub? Is that something that the family really enjoys? Do you have dogs? How do you want to keep the dogs on the deck? Do we need to do gates for that? Lifestyle, do you have a lot of friends that come over, or is it just you guys, right? Or is it you and a couple of couples? And so really designed for the 6 to 8 kind of party, right? And then I have other people who are like, yeah, we have 40 people over on the weekends. Whole different thing, right? So you're designing for that. So I get to know the people and their lifestyle, you know, before I even start designing. Or as we're talking about different things that they like and stuff, I'm thinking about all of those kind of things. And then you have safety stuff like lighting, right? Lighting is important for people to be able to get around at night, right? So you got to think about that and incorporate that into the design. I mean, well, lighting is probably the biggest safety factor. Yeah,
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, and then, well, there's rails and there's drop-offs that we do and different things like that. And you got to think about how people are walking, you know, where they're going to step. You never want to do stairs halfway across a deck that has no rails because people don't know where the steps are and where they're not.
Let's say I was a prospective client and I want to build a beautiful backyard resort, but I have no clue where to begin or how to even conceptualize this. There's a lot that goes into it. What do I do? Where do I start? How would you help someone like me begin this process and keep from feeling extremely overwhelmed?
Yes, it is overwhelming. There's so many parts and pieces, it's so complicated. I have friends that build houses. They don't want to do outdoor spaces because to them it's a huge pain in the ass. And there's too much downside, too much time, too much oversight, too much design work. And especially if they're doing it where they're building another architect that done the design, makes it really complicated for them because there's always these things that have to be figured out, right? I talked before about adapting materials and stuff like that.
Yes.
It's not always black and white and it's not always on the blueprint. So it's kind of knowledge that you need to have. When I'm working with a client, I'm looking at their house like a blank slate. They have all these preconceived notions and everything. I don't really want to see that. What I want to see is their backyard. When I look at that and I have a conversation with them about their lifestyle, I can imagine what the ultimate cool space would be for them. And then I can draw that picture for them. And once I do that and get that on the board, like the parts and pieces, then we can dial that in from there. Because now they've got a visual, like, okay, yeah, that's cool, but could we move this over to here? Yeah, we can move it. We got to tweak this around, do this. I can guide them through that. I'm their Sherpa.
Kind of sounds like a superpower.
Yeah, a little bit, maybe.
So you're taking a process that is maybe often or at least sometimes disjointed and you're all for one, doing it all.
Right, that's the beauty of design build. That there's not a lot of people, but there's plenty of people that do design build. And those guys, because they're putting it together, they're designing it and they're putting it together, they know right from the beginning what this is going to take to put together. And they can oftentimes give you alternatives that are going to be 98% of what you want for 50% less.
We have come a long way from those decks that you were sealing back in the day.
And from the first deck I built that I really hated.
Yes, I'm glad you get to build something you love now.
Yes, very much so.
What have you learned from some of the bigger, more complex projects that you now apply to smaller scale ones?
What we do when we take a bigger project and we scale it down, you have to distill it down to its most important parts, right? So it's even more, traffic flow is super important, right? But you want to get a lot of the elements, a lot of people want a lot of elements and sometimes they're restricted. For instance, I had this project a few years ago that literally took 2 years to get permitted because we had to go to the DEP and God help these poor people. There was frogs in their backyard, very special kind of frogs. So it was an environmental problem. We worked it out, we went through the whole thing. They got environmental lawyers, got involved. Nobody in the DEP would want to touch it. So basically it came down to us rebuilding the deck in the exact same square footage as the existing. The existing deck was not that big. It was 500 square feet, which is okay. But for what they wanted, the original design was closer to 1,000 square feet. So we had to rework the design. And actually, this is a favorite of a bunch of my guys that have worked on this project. We got them a kitchen, a covered roof, louvered roof, everything that they wanted, just in a smaller scale and with a different kind of flow to it. And they were over the moon. They just absolutely loved it. But it was really the thoughtful design that went into it. Like every foot, every square foot counts. So the way it was laid out, the furniture choices, that's an important thing too. If you have a big space, you can go with the big chunky furniture. But there's lots of companies that make smaller, streamlined, more modern furniture that's not so big. And where you could only get a table for 8 with the big chunky one, maybe you can get a table for 12 with that one, which is sometimes makes all the difference.
Is it safe to say that bigger is not always better then?
It's not always better.
What I'm hearing is that so much detail and thought goes into each design. This must take a lot of collaboration. How many people are on your team to accomplish these detailed, intricate projects?
A lot of work goes into these projects. 100 to 200 hours on average after a design concept is approved. We're breaking it down multiple levels, multiple people on my team, whether it's interior designers, architects, engineers, production, head of production, guys that are actually going to build this and put this together. Everybody weighs in right at that beginning point there so that we can massage the design and make sure that it's going to, every little detail will work out. Because anybody who's ever built anything, or if they were fortunate enough not to be involved in the conversation, it's definitely happened where the builder was standing there with the carpenter or whoever was standing there towards the end of the project looking at something going, how are we going to finish this? How are we going to trim this door? So that's kind of like when you have a disconnect between the design team and the build team. Those kind of things can happen. Who's left in the middle? It's the client getting frustrated and with the checkbook writing to fix things that really should have been looked at ahead of time. But it's construction. You're building on site in an imperfect environment. There's a lot going on. Things can get missed, right? If that's something like that ever happens, we're the one that fixes it, pays the bill. It's not happening again. So to avoid those kind of mistakes, we're looking at it from the end. Where does this column line up? How close is it to the stairs? How close is it to the kitchen?
Yeah, it sounds like you've really put together and now provide to your clients an A-team.
That's exactly what it is, A-team.
Before today, I had no clue how many people were behind the scenes of and how much went into each and every project you work on. Really sounds like you've turned this into a science with your master plan and the team that you've hand-selected. Thank you all for tuning in, and Sean, thanks for sharing your knowledge and for teaching us what really goes into designing and building outdoor living spaces this spectacular. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone watching has too.